Can continue.
Very good afternoon. Very good afternoon to you all, friends. I am Sanjeev Singhal, Central Council member and Chairman, Auditing and Assurance Standard Board. On my behalf and on behalf of my Vice Chairman, C. Vishal Bhai Doshi, I welcome you all to the 130th program of AASB for this council year. It has been our endeavor to equip our members in the area of auditing. Every possible aspect we have tried to cover in these physical and the virtual programs. And this year we also brought in the auditing standard checklist and audit working paper suggestive formats also. And we have run two helpline, one on the bank audit and second on the audits other than bank audit. For 5.5 months, that helpline was operational. We had 50 experts. So, and along with the Center for Audit Quality, where we issued the materiality checklist, now the engagement letter formats have been issued. So your ICI is taking every possible step to ensure that our member deliver the best of the audit quality. And today, we have with us a great speaker, Shri Sandeep Denodia ji, who is an iconic personality in our profession. His firm SR Denodia and Company LLP is in existence from 72 years, almost similar to the number of years for which our institute has been in existence, and has done the best of the audits in the public sector as well as the private sector. He has a passion for the audit and sharing his knowledge with the member. Thank you very much, Sandeep ji. And I have an equal pleasure of introducing two of my very learned council colleagues. One, C. Dayanivas Bhai Sharma from Hyderabad, who joined the council with me. So in the 24th council, we were together. Now we are together in the 25th council. And, with the support of the member, we'll be there in the 26th council as well. Dayabai has been the Board of Studies chairman. He has been the vice chairman for many, many years for DAB. And he has led many IT initiatives of the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India. He has been the vice chairman of the IND-AS Implementation Committee. He's one person whose heart beats for our members. He brought this domestic networking guidelines, marathon meetings he did, and he's been a member of so many standing as well as the non-standing committees of the institute. Before I invite him to speak, let me also introduce another council colleague, C. Gyanbhai Mishra from Ghaziabad, Uttar Pradesh. Gyanbhai is, I think, the distinguishing feature that we have observed in this council is he speaks from the heart. When he speaks, he is so pertinent and so meticulous in his observations that in few words, whatever he says is equivalent to thousands of words. He is leading the Tender Monitoring Committee group, which is very, very important to ensure that our members, do not quote arbitrarily lower fee in the tenders. He's the chairman of the Insolvency Committee. He's been the vice chairman of the CP Committee. And in the Insolvency Committee, we achieved this milestone this year that in Singapore, Resolve conference was, organized, in which members from several countries participated. And even this news item was covered in 170 print and online papers. And Gyanbhai's passion I've seen in this 1.5 year. He's a friend who is available at 4 a.m. I mean, to some people, we call them 4 a.m. friends. That is, you can call them at any point of time. So thank you so much, Gyanbhai. So may I request first Dayabhai to offer his views, and then Gyanbhai, and then we'll be inviting Sandeep Denodia ji for his deliberation on very, very pertinent topic on audit working paper. There's an old saying that pehle likh fir de, bhool pade to bahi se le. That is, documentation is very, very important. So audit working paper is the key. It acts as our insurance against any action that may arise on the professionals. So with this, may I now invite Dayabhai for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev bhai, and indeed a pleasure to address 130th
a series of lectures, which itself shows the testimony, and it gives the testimony that, the focus institute is trying to put on our members learning, and more importantly, the auditing standards, which are the mother of the entire accounting auditing profession as such. Accounting standards are something to be applied by the organizations and that are being audited by us. But auditing is something which we do, and that's our primary responsibility to look into certain aspects. So, your focus, I think, whether a person is in practice or in industry, he has to understand the importance of working paper and the documentation is very critical. I think 72 years is not a short time, right? And more importantly, when you talk about 72 years of standing, then if you go back to the first year of your firm's establishment, might be your father would have established that firm. Yeah. And that day or even today or in time to come, documentation and working paper are always going to be relevant. They have been relevant in past, they are relevant today, and they'll also be relevant in time to come. The point is, in the newer technology, how it is going to be done. And most importantly, today, earlier we had articleship of 3 years. So student used to come back, but now the articleship is also reduced to 2 years, which is more focused, which has its own advantages. But yes, the fact goes very simple. The number of people who are going to churn by the partnership firms and large firms at any given point in time, or even the smaller firms, the people who are going to come and go are going to be in good numbers in time to come. Because this year, Sanjeev bhai, as you know, after the change of curriculum, highest ever registrations of foundation students, the best once upon a time, I don't know which time it was, they said it was 75,000, but this June registrations were 85,000 people registered for the new course of CA. That means more and more people are going to come, and more people are going to do work on your behalf. So the primary responsibility lies on the partner who is signing the financial statements. That means the documentation or the working papers are to be today traced and placed in such manner that it should be the easiest retrievable process which we need to look at. That means the entire systemic approach which we need to follow for doing the proper filing and documenting the entire working papers will become very relevant. Today, people are, Sanjeev bhai, you know it very well. And Sandeep ji, you also will agree, Gyan ji will agree. Once upon a time, might be my grandfather or those people used to say, ये मेरी बैंक है, यहाँ से मैं retire होऊंगा. या इस फर्म में मैं काम कर रहा था इतने सालों से, अब मैं रिटायर होऊंगा, or something like that. That kind of situations were there. But today, every alternate year, we are seeing people coming in, going out. So we are going to stay back in the profession, and that means that might be after 10 years also, 8 years also, if any kind of inquiry or question comes, we should be in position to pull out that paper and put it before the institute or any regulatory body, which becomes very, very critical. So considering this fact, don't want to talk much on the working paper side, but yes, would like to say one thing. Today's generation is on calculators and WhatsApp and multiple other such platforms. That means they think that they have done the entire thing by sharing information across on the short notes, right? But that should be actually forming part of my documenting files, which is very important, right? So considering the technology, the youth, and the requirement of the law, we need to ensure that how these things can be collaborated together and made effective use of, so that this information which is lying not in my file or my mobile, but it is lying somewhere in cloud, which is always permanent, and we can pull out, and that doesn't have a probability of any fire or any other things. So with this, I just would like to thank Sanjeev Bhai for giving this opportunity, because we were just in the corridors of the institute and we thought, let us come and share our thoughts.
Thank you, Dev. Thank you. Let me now invite C. Gyanbhai Mishra. I remember when our code of ethics, new code of ethics discussion was going on, and we were thinking of a shlok. We were thinking of long shloks, and Gyanbhai gave Dharmo Rakshati Rakshata. So that is the brevity at which he speaks. But today, of course, I would like that he gives his detailed remarks.
So much thank you. Sanjeev Bhai, very respected chairman of AASB, C.A. Devanivas Sharma ji, very prominent practicing member, and of course, my council colleague, very respected speaker of the today's program, Sandeep ji, and of course, secretary of the committee, Anil ji, who is doing very hard work for the committee, and very respected participants. Good afternoon to one and all. Friends, indeed, it's a privilege to me that I get this opportunity to share my thoughts before this session starts. So when speakers like Sandeep ji is here, so need not no discuss about the technical issues, but this documentation is not, from this generation only. I would like to tell Sanjeev Bhai one instance from Ramcharitmanas. When हनुमान जी जब सीता जी से मिलने गए तो उन्होंने सीता जी को कैसे बताया कि हमें राम जी ने भेजा है, तो राम जी ने उनको एक मुद्री देके भेजा था।
Audit evidence.
तो जब गए तो उन्होंने उसको पहले गिराया सीता जी के पास, तो सीता जी को लगा ये हमारा रिंग कहां से आया, ये तो भगवान श्री राम का रिंग है। फिर उनको लगा कि भगवान श्री राम को जीत करके कोई रिंग ये ले नहीं सकता था। तो हनुमान जी फिर प्रकट हुए, उन्होंने सीता जी को बताया कि मैं उनका दूत हूं, मैं ही लेके आया हूं। तो दैट वाज द ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन एट दैट टाइम दैट ही प्रूव्ड दैट ही केम फ्रॉम हियर। फिर जब हनुमान जी को वापस जाना हुआ भगवान श्री राम के पास, तो उन्होंने रामचरितमानस में तुलसीदास जी ने लिखा, मात मोहि दीजे कछु चीन्हा जैसे रघुनायक मोहि दीना, कि माता जी वैसे ही हमें कोई प्रतीक दीजिए, वैसे डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कीजिए जैसे भगवान श्री राम ने किया था। तो चूड़ामणि सीता जी ने उतार करके हनुमान जी को दिया, कहा जब आप भगवान श्री राम को दोगे तो ऑटोमेटिक इस्टेब्लिश हो जाएगा कि आप हमसे मिले थे। So audit documentation is not, this are only auditing purpose. This has been across our culture, our, thought process. This has been in the blood of, when it comes to establish something, then audit documentation automatically comes. And probably for a chartered accountant who are always at the risk to prove anything at any time, and a lot of responsibilities have been imposed from the statute. So it's time that we must adhere all the process of audit documentation. And of course, no better speaker could be here than Sandeep ji to deliver and deliberate on this issue. I compliment Sanjeev Bhai for his untiring effort. What I have seen in last 1.5 years, not only in AASB or sustainability, he is basically called a sustainability man in my council. So, but other than this, I have seen his working in PRC also, that whatever area he has tried, he had delivered the best to the institute and of course to the nation. So I once again congratulate to you, Sanjeev Bhai, for your untiring efforts for the profession, and I'm sure that this journey will continue along, and we have to lead the profession at the best.
Thank you, Gyanbhai. Thanks a lot for your kind words. With this, may I now invite our speaker for the day, CA Sandeep Dinodia ji, for his deliberation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjeev ji. Thank you, Daya ji and Gyan ji for the introduction and kind words. And thank you to the AASP for inviting me to take this session. It is something which is very close to my heart. And I have, in my firm, we have been working on improving our own audit documentation for many, many months, years, and we keep working at it continuously. It's a continuous effort. And I must compliment the Institute that the 2 guidance notes and the working paper templates and the guidance notes on 230 that they have come out with, they are really excellent. And a lot of my time I'm going to devote today is to just take the members through these guidance notes, because, when you get a 300-page guidance note to read is very tough. So once you have a cross-reference and somebody explains a little bit to you, it becomes an easier book to open. So I'm going to take a lot of help and base my presentation today on the work done by the Institute already and these guidance notes on SA 230 and also on the checklist audit working paper templates and the SA 230 template, as well as the implementation guide of SA 230. So can I share the screen now? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Reflex. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm basing my audit documentation on SA 230, which is the mother document for audit documentation. And as Sanjeev ji very nicely put it, and Gyan Bhai also put it, audit documentation is, if it is documented, it is done. If it is not documented, then it is difficult to prove that we have done the audit exercise. So a lot of time my teams in my office come and say, sir, we have done this work and we have checked it. So I keep asking them, if you checked it, I don't see it, because till I see a paper and a documented proof in my audit files, I don't consider it done. So not documented is not done, even though your teams and you yourself may have done it. So it's very important now to document everything that we do. I'll just give a small example. A few days ago, I'd gone to a doctor, and old doctor, he was nearly 80 years old in a hospital, and he opened a computer screen in front of me, put down my name. He was typing with one finger, and I asked him, doctor, what are you doing? He said, I've been asked by my hospital to document everything that I'm doing with every patient. So I have to put into my computer all your ailments, all your problems, and the solution, and why I've reached that solution, what prescription I've done, is all going to be documented. So the 80-year-old man also was sitting there. Sorry, I should not say old man. 80 is now the new young man. 80-year-old doctor was documenting everything. So the new generation of CAs that are coming, the article trainees that we're doing, have to learn this art of documentation as a part of their life while doing an audit process. Now, what is audit documentation is very clearly defined in SA 230. It includes the audit procedures performed, including the planning of the audit. It also includes the relevant audit evidence obtained from the client, and based on the procedures performed and the evidence obtained, the conclusions reached thereon. These all together constitute working papers. The auditor needs to satisfy himself that the financial statements are properly drawn up, and I quote from SA 230, that according to the best of his information and explanation given to him, and if not, in what respect the auditor is not satisfied. So we have been using this term, according to the best of the information and explanation given to him, from many years. But the significance is that I am satisfied with the explanation that have been given to me by the auditee, and if not, I must then document also where I'm not satisfied, and that must be carried in my audit report. Examples of documents, I'm just giving a small example of working papers, include copy of, it's not limited to these, it's just an example, copy of extracts of signed agreements, videos, pictures, spreadsheets, transcripts, correspondences, data in electronic form containing records in a systematic manner. Even if you have gone for, if you were present during a physical verification of inventory and you recorded on your camera the physical inventory process and the bin cards and the entries in the bin cards, these are also audit evidence that you were there, you physically saw the inventory verification process, and these can be documented in the audit documentation process. The audit file can have one or many more folders, or can be in physical form and also in now, not in physical form, in electronic form. It contains records that comprise audit documentation for a specific engagement. So each specific engagement must carry an audit file. Okay. The requirements of audit documentation. These are appearing in various places. The first is that the auditor shall comply with and the Companies Act section 143(9) with accounting standard. The Companies Act says accounting standards. The accounting standard SA 230 is one of the accounting standards on audit documentation. So therefore, we have to follow 230 audit documentation based on a diktat of the Companies Act 2013, section 143(9). So a lot of time people, my students in my office ask me that why do we need audit documentation? Is it compulsory under Companies Act? So this is the answer to that question. Then implementation guide on SA 230, which is revised edition, has been published in 2022. Audit working paper template issued in June 2023. Checklist on standards of auditing in June 2023. Quality standards on quality control SQC1, earlier published in October 2007 and amended in August 2009. Specific documentation requirements of other auditing standards and standards on auditing. Additional requirements as per specific laws and regulations, could be the Banking Regulation Act, could be Non-Banking Financial Companies Act, could be Real Estate Act, could be any other Telecommunication Act, could be Mining Act, could be any other act. All these acts have specific issues where auditing certain specific areas and specific methodologies need to be applied. Now, applicable professional standards as per SA 230 audited documentation, there must be some firms' policies on how audit documentation is to be done. Your own firm's policies and procedures as per SQC1 need to be established very clearly. Thereafter, this audit documentation will support the conclusions that we have reached based on the audit, and applicable legal and regulatory requirements that are there to each and every audit have to be complied with. The importance of audit documentation. Documentation of audit is the backbone of the audit. The work that the auditor performs, the explanations given to the auditor, and the conclusion arrived are all evidenced by this documentation. This documentation results in better conceptual clarity and clarity of thought and expression. Inadequate or improper documentation may be considered as deficiency in performing an audit. The auditor may have executed appropriate audit procedures. However, if there is no documentation to prove it, it may put a question on the work done in case any material misstatement is reported. Improper and incomplete documentation may put the auditor in difficult situations, such as action from various regulators. If we look at the table that I have given on the left side, the importance of regulations, I have the first box says internal reviews. So once an audit is completed and you need to review the audit at the various level of the manager, partner, or quality control partner, these can only be done if there's proper documentation in the files. This includes something called a cold review. There are two kinds of reviews, cold review and hot review. The cold review is essentially a quality monitoring process that reviews all audit papers after an audit report is signed off. And a hot review is where it is done before the signing off of the audit report. Then various regulators, the NEFRA, QRB, SEBI, may ask for the audit files of any audit done by an auditor to seek all the audit evidence based on which the audit was conducted, to see whether the audit was properly done, the audit was properly evidenced, and the conclusions that the auditor has reached are evidenced, have proper backup evidence and discussion papers. Besides that, the ICAI also does a peer review, where the peer review will also review the audit files and the audit documentation. These files are also needed sometimes in case of any litigation with the client or of the client or any third parties where audit files may be called for. The nature and purpose of audit documentation. The first and the most important part of the audit documentation is that it assists the audit team to plan and perform the audit itself. Secondly, it enables the audit team to be accountable for its work, which means that once you assign the work to various people for doing various exercises, each one becomes responsible for the conduct of the audit in various areas, and it assists the team leader in supervising the work of the audit. It supports and evidences work done and compliance with auditing standards and accounting standards. Matters of continuing significance are retained for future audits. If documentation is not there, there's certain issues which we carry forward to the next year, and these are again documented in the audit documentation. Enabling the conduct of quality control reviews and inspections in accordance with SQC1, which is now an extremely important part of a closure of an audit. Before the signing off is done, quality control reviews and inspections, and even their documentation of the quality control inspection is a very important part of the audit evidence, as we will see in the subsequent slide, where I've given some examples of some NEFRA orders on quality control reviews. The objective to prepare documentation is that it provides sufficient and appropriate record of the basis of auditor's report and evidence that the audit was planned and performed in accordance with the essays and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. As we had seen, friends, earlier slides, that there are various regulatory requirements and applicable requirements based on which the audit is done. So this audit documentation should carry adequate evidence that we have complied with the essays and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. If we this audit documentation will also assist external inspection of regulatory bodies. It will also create accountability, not only within the firm of the team, but between the firm and the auditee and the firm and the regulators. So it is a very important part of evidencing what work has been done and if it's been correctly done and how the conclusions have been arrived at. The scope of SA 230 can be divided into 4 parts. The auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statement. Specific documents required for other essays do not limit applications of essay, which means that if there are other essays require some other documentation to be created, and are not given in 230 does not mean we don't create them. We still have to comply with all the essays, and we have given my presentation a list of all the essays which is taken from the template provided by the institute in a very nice guidance note on templates that have been just created. To be adapted to audits of other historical financial information. So SA 230 is not only for auditing financial statements, but wherever we are auditing other financial information also, could be for LODR, for financials, for any other certification work. Even for each and every attestation function, we need to have created proper audit documentation. It's not limited to audit of financial statements only. As I said earlier, there are the laws and regulations may establish additional requirements, which also we have to fulfill. The form and content of the audit documentation. So this is a very wide and very big topic on what form and what content and what audit documentation I have to maintain. And actually, it will depend on the size and nature of each auditing assignment, attestation assignment, I'd rather call it, because as I just said, this is not limited to financial statements. It could be certification. It could be any other historical information that is being certified by the auditor. So I will try to cover some important aspects of the audit documentation. The audit documentation should be sufficient evidence to allow an experienced auditor with no previous connection to the audit engagement to understand nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedures, to comply with essays and legal and regulatory requirements, identify characteristics of specific items tested based on who performed the audit work and the date of completion, who reviewed and the date and extent of such review, results of the audit procedures and audit evidence obtained, significant matters arising during the audit, conclusions reached thereon, significant professional judgments made in reaching these conclusions. So, friends, all these have to be documented. Besides this, discussions of significant matters with the management, the nature of significant matters, when and with whom the discussions took place. So in my experience, while conducting an audit, there are various issues that come up which need to be discussed with the management in terms of legal issues, accounting issues, basic business related issues, and understanding the business environment of the auditee. And these should be documented based on the discussion, and not only the discussion should be documented, but also when and with whom the discussion took place in the auditee's office have to also be documented, so that there is clear evidence on how we closed all the audit issues that were raised during the course of the audit by the audit team. How the auditor addressed the if there is any inconsistency in the information with the final conclusion, this also will need to be documented. This, as I said earlier, the form and contents of the audit documentation depends on various factors. The most important being the size and complexity of a client. It's a large listed entity will have a different kind of complexity. A small trading company with a small turnover will have with much less complexity issues. A service provider who's only doing professional services will have a different complexity. A company engaged in a single manufacturing unit will have different complexity, and a company with multi-factories spread all over the country will have different complexities. A company with different manufacturing or trading or warehousing operations spread not only in the country, but outside the country will have different complexities. So the audit program, planning and documentation will have to be geared and tailor-made to the size and complexity of the client. The nature of the audit procedures will also depend on the size and complexity of the client. The procedures will be the large client, how the materiality will be calculated, how you will cover all the areas of the audit. Everything will have to be part of the planning. You will also have to assess and identify risks or misstatement on where are the risk areas in each client and identify them and make sure the audit process covers all those risks of material misstatement. Significance of audit evidence obtained. The audit evidence should be credible. It should be not a hearsay. If suppose you are looking at a bank reconciliation, for example, simplest evidence, you must have a bank statement to tally with the book balance, and not take the word of the client that this is the balance which is in the books and is reconciled. The nature, extent of exceptions identified, need to document a conclusion. Whenever we are concluding on a certain issue, we need to document the conclusion. The audit methodology and tools used to conduct the audit, it could be a sampling tool, it could be audit methodology by which we are taking out a sample. For example, if you're doing a provisioning of debtors by ECL modeling, then the modeling will have to be properly documented. Any other methodology of audit that we used in various areas will have to be documented. For a small and medium scale enterprise, less extensive may not include instruction to the team, but experienced auditor condition will still apply. The audit documentation essentially has 4 stages: the pre-audit stage, the planning stage, the execution stage, and the audit conclusion stage. In the pre-audit stage, we will look at gathering data about the client, finding out what is the nature of his business, finding out what are the areas of material misstatement, what are the past analyticals of the financial figures, how the company's figures are moving, what are the risk areas in the audit, what has happened in the preceding years, and what is the future of the company. And then have a discussion with the management on the team that is engaged in the audit from the auditee's side, and look at the quality of the audit documentation accounts that they are producing. All these will be pre-audit stage planning, and get a very important part I missed out, the gathering data on the major structure of the company in terms of memorandum articles, studying the memorandum articles, the partnership deed if so, and in case of any other non-corporate entities, entity incorporation documents, their registration with the tax authorities, and any past litigation with tax, GST, etc. So these are all pre-audit stage documents that can be taken, which will then be a basis for planning the audit and planning the audit program. So once you have an understanding of the risk areas, the materiality, the quality of the accounting records, the quality of the people, the various complexities of the organization, only then we will be able to plan the audit properly. Once it is planned, we will then do execution of this audit with our audit team. We will discuss it with our audit team, allocate areas to them. The team leader will be given responsibility, and he will then conduct the audit with the team. On conclusion of the audit, we will get all the issues that have come up during the audit, document all the issues, how they are closed, what were the conclusions and how they were reached. And based on that, we will draft out our audit report and give our opinion on the audit and the financial statements or the certification, as the case may be. The total audit documentation that we will retain should normally be divided into two kinds of files. I am taking it for granted that now 99.9% of these audit files will be all in soft copies. So you'll have to create folders for a permanent audit file and a current audit file. This permanent audit file contains those documents, the use of which is not restricted to one time period and extends to subsequent audits also. In the subsequent slide, we will discuss in detail some of the contents of the current audit file and the permanent audit file. So the permanent audit file is an extremely important file where which can go from year to year, and if we don't keep these intact, they can we can make mistakes in the disclosures that go now with the new Schedule 3 format or the non-corporate assessees format of the document of the financial statement, which require a lot of this information to be given there. For example, the list of shareholders, the directors, etc., needs to be now incorporated in the financial statements. So the examples, I'm only giving examples. This is not a comprehensive list. It is only a list which is for guidance. Permanent file should contain the memorandum articles, the deed, bylaws, or regulations of the company or corporate society or a firm, etc. It must contain the audit engagement letter. As Sanjeev ji had just said, that the format of the engagement letter has now been prescribed and recommended by the institution. We should try to follow that. Client acceptance, re-acceptance procedures performed, communication with the previous auditors, constitution of client and relevant acts and statutes, history and background of the entity, organizational structure of the client, the list of directors, partners, trustees, bankers, and lawyers, laws and regulations applicable to the entity, legal documentations such as prospectus, lease, sales agreement, audited financial statement for the previous 3 years, abstracts or copies of significant contracts, agreements, minutes, special resolutions, etc., registration certificates under various statutes and regulations like PAN, GST, MSME, DGFT, etc. You could also add to this some major legal judgments for or against the company in terms of, suppose the company has been subjected to certain seizure procedures, then in the permanent file you would like to put the past history of the tax litigation. If there are any major contingent liabilities there or liabilities, past liabilities under any statute, then the orders under which those liabilities have come, it could be under DGFT, it could be under acquisition of land, it could be for unearned increase charged on higher land values, could be anything. So all these legal orders for or against the company should also be kept in the permanent audit file. The current audit file, of course, will have the current year's engagement letter, an appointment letter, and a fee letter, independence declaration and documents of not only the firm but also of the team that is engaged in conduct of the audit. The audit plan is the main thing in the current audit file, the audit program, as you call it, the risk assessment documents and fraud assessment checklist and materiality calculations. These are extremely important to be documented and put into the audit file. Working papers for routine audit information like audit programs, checklists, reconciliations, supportings, etc. List of samples selected for testing and basis of selection. So not only samples, but how the samples have been selected. The basis of selection must also be documented in the audit file. Substantive analytical procedures, including development of expectations and investigation of differences, third-party confirmations and their documents, extract from minutes relating to the financial statements, audit checklist for routine audit and compliance with SAs, AS, CARO, TAR, and compliance of applicable laws and regulations. These audit checklists have been now compiled by the Institute in the guidance note on templates. All of them are available there. We will discuss them in detail later. Queries raised, explanation given, and closure of the audit queries is a must to be documented in the audit files. The partner review and engagement quality control review documents, critical issues identified and subsequent discussions with the management, correspondence including mail with the management concerning significant matters, and minutes of meetings with the management. This is something that we normally miss out when we go and meet the management and we discuss issues. We normally don't minute those meetings and the conclusions in those meetings. The auditing standard requires that we need to document that too. The signed financial statement along with audit report, signed closing trial balance, management representation letter. This, friends, is a checklist on standards on auditing, which is again given by the Institute in the checklist of templates. I have only given this as a illustration that when we are doing an audit, we need to check which of the essays are applicable or not applicable to the auditee. And then once we arrive at a conclusion that there are auditing standards that are applicable, then wherever we have the relevant working papers, that working paper must be attached in this column, last column. Because if we have it somewhere else and we have not linked it to this, NAFRA says that that is not enough, and we will not consider that as a credible audit evidence that you have looked at it. So we must link each of the items. For example, agreeing the terms of engagement, the terms of engagement letter, wherever it is soft filed, the link should be here in this audit documentation checklist itself. It has various audits. What we discussed just now is more comprehensive in terms of essays for each. These essays are for our guidance and we have to follow them. Now, there are certain do's and don'ts in the audit documentation. What we must do and what we shouldn't do. So we've tried to put them together here. The do's are document only the work auditor has actually performed, and don't document things that you have not actually done. Document only that is relevant to the audit. So sometimes we go and we do inquiries on some creditors, some debtors, and which are not really eventually turn out to be relevant. We can exclude those audit procedures or document which are not finally relevant to our audit. That weeding out can be done. Documents that enable the conduct of quality control reviews and inspection. So these documents are a must. Documents that enable the engagement team to be accountable for its work. So here also the engagement team, which is conducting the audit on behalf of the firm, their accountability must be fixed and signed off in each file. Document that enables analysis of various account balances through comparative and corroborative evidence. Retain a record of matters of continuing significance to future audit. Document that enable the conduct of external inspection in accordance with applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Separate bifurcation of documents provided by the client and document generated by the team. So these two need to be segregated. Keep all working files in one place as a part of audit documentation, both hard copy and soft copy. This is a requirement of NAFRA. And when we come to subsequent slide, we'll show you that NAFRA has ticked off some audit firms for not keeping all the audit documentation in one time at one place. What you should not do is don't document superseded worksheets. So while conducting an audit, you may make Excel sheets, you may make working sheets, you may make drafts. And finally, these are they conclude into a final financial statement opinion. So these working sheets which are not relevant to the final working can be deleted. Don't document notes that reflect incomplete or preliminary thinking which did not effectively go into the final conclusion or did not affect the or forming of the final opinion. You need not keep those incomplete or preliminary thinking documents. Don't document previous copies of documents corrected or typographical errors or other errors. So if there are documents which had errors and you corrected them, you don't need to now retain the old documents which you corrected. Don't retain duplicate copies of audit evidences and documents. So multiple copies serve no purpose, so single copy is enough. So this is again a cleaning up of the audit files post-audit, as the SA says, within 60 days of the closure audit. These all cleaning up exercises can be done, which makes the audit files and audit documentation more precise and accurate. Don't document oral explanations by the auditor on their own if it doesn't represent adequate work for the work performed or conclusions reached, but may be used to explain or clarify information contained in the audit documentation. So, oral explanation by the auditor on their work on their own doesn't represent adequate audit work. So, you must have information and on documentation to support your conclusion. Don't alter working papers subsequently without noting the justification and the time and the date why the audit paper was subsequently modified. Don't record inconsistent, vague, or implausible responses from the management. So these are some general do's and don'ts for audit documentation. The characteristics of audit documentation: it should be complete and accurate. It should have clarity and conciseness, that from the reading the documentation, we should be able to understand how the entire audit process went about without need for any supplementary examination or further going into the records. The ease of preparation. While the audit teams will be called upon to collect large volumes of working papers, to the extent they can use the entity prepared documents and reports, pre-printed and standard audit stationery and automatically generated standard working paper format, the time and effort may be optimized. Legibility and neatness applies to particularly to photocopies, that sometimes the photocopies or scanned copies are not legible. So we must ensure that there are legible copies that are kept in the audit documentation. Relevance. Working papers should be restricted to matters which are important, pertinent, and useful for the purpose of the audit. Ease of review should contain cross-references. As we said, there's a checklist. The checklist should have cross-references, so it's ease of going into the audit memoranda, discussion papers, audit observations, field audit report, performance audit report, as the case may be, to enable the AG, PAG, and the supervisory authority to link the working papers to the audit conclusions and recommendations. Organizations and ease of reference may contain an omnibus, easy to follow index with proper narration for all volumes in audit summary file and an index for each of working paper files. So the indexing of files is extremely important. From there, all the audit documentation will flow. Complete audit trail of analysis, so organized so that an uninitiated person can follow the trail of how the subject was selected, how the evidence was gathered, what was the evidence collected, and how the audit conclusions were formulated. This should include evidence for the positive findings as well. Audit procedures performed according to instructions of the audit program. ensures that all procedures in the audit program are addressed and nothing is missed out in the audit working papers. Recording of work allocation. This helps in fixing responsibility of the persons doing the various parts of the audit. Writing of queries in detail. This again, various teams will write their various queries in detail, and then their conclusion has to be done by the team leader and then eventually by the partner and then seen by the quality control partner. Disposing of queries at staff, senior, partner level, discussions with seniors on matters importance, recording of conclusions reached, and the basis for them. Working papers must be signed, dated, and approved by the relevant level of audit staff that is engaged in the audit. Safety, data protection from further modifications. Now, whether the working papers are in physical form, they have to be properly stored from natural calamities, from natural issues like water, termite, etc. They are stored in an electronic form, then they should be put in proper backup procedures have to be done so that these sort files are not destroyed for any reason. Just a short discussion on how to document the evidence in current digital scenario. Placing reliance on scanned documents is extremely important, because once the document is scanned and put into the files, it remains there forever. Consider the reliability of scanned document and whether the document is faithful in form and content to the original. Considering the controls that the management has implemented for converting hard copies in electronic format. Obtain written representations from the management regarding authenticity of scanned documents. Validating completeness and authenticity of scanned documents. Inquiry with the document owner and the person who has scanned the document. Reviewing the source documents. And of course, last but not the least, to ensure in your own firm that these electronically stored evidences have complete backup, so that in case of any virus or other issues or short circuit or anything, God forbid, they are kept in a third place in a storage on a hard disk or on a computer separately away from the office, so that they are always available for retrieval. Departure from a relevant requirement happens in exceptional circumstances only. Documents the following: reasons for the departure, how alternative audit procedures were to aim to fulfill the requirement, report to draw attention to departure if applicable. So here I'm just trying to give some examples that there is a relevant procedure for trade receivables where we are normally, the SA asked us to get confirmations from the parties for trade receivables or trade payables, and in a lot of times we don't get any response from the parties, from the debtors or the creditors, and in these cases we are allowed to perform alternative procedures. For example, in case of trade receivables, we see subsequent sales realizations, the sales evidence for open unpaid invoices. For trade payables, we see subsequent vendor payments, purchase evidence for open unpaid invoices. Similarly, for inventory, reasons for departure is impractical. Suppose it's impracticable to attend inventory counting verification because of location or the nature of particular inventory item. Then purchase evidence for specific inventory items acquired prior to physical inventory counting. Subsequent sales evidence for such inventory items. Third-party confirmation if held with the third party. All these alternative audit procedures need to be thoroughly documented and should have adequate evidence in our audit files on how we have applied these audit evidences to reach a satisfactory or unsatisfactory conclusion about these items. These are just Three examples are given, but these could apply to other parts of the audit program also. In exceptional circumstances, the auditor performs additional procedures, draws a new conclusion after the date of the auditor's report. In these cases, where after the audit is conducted, after the date of the financial statements, we must look at the circumstances where we encountered it, new additional audit procedures performed, audit evidence obtained, conclusions reached, effect on our audit report, circumstances encountered, who made the review and audit documentation. So all these will be looked at based on case-to-case basis. So this can be actually in two parts. One is evidences that have come to our knowledge post the financial statement date, but before signing of the audit, or after signing of the audit. Also, we can come across these evidences and we need to then document them. Assembly of audit documentation, SQC1 requires the firm to establish policies and procedures for timely completion of assembly of audit files. The auditor should complete the administrative process of assembling the final audit file on timely basis, not more than 60 days after the date of the auditor's report. So this is extremely important, that the completion of the audit documentation files should be done within 60 days of the issue of the audit report. The process does not involve the performance of new audit procedures or drawing new conclusions, but changes in the audit documentation of administrative nature only, like we discussed earlier, deleting or discarding superseded information, sorting, collating, and cross-referencing working papers, signing off on completed checklists relating to file assembly process, documenting audit evidence that the auditor has obtained, discussed, and agreed with the relevant members of the engagement team before the date of the auditor's report. Any changes or additions that are not considered as administrative changes constitute new audit evidence and means that the audit procedures were either not completed or documented on or before the date of the auditor's report. Retention of audit documentation, SQC1 requires a firm to establish policies and procedures for retention of audit files for a period sufficient to meet the needs of the firm or as required by law and regulation. In specific case of audit engagements, the retention period ordinarily is no shorter than 7 years from the date of the audit report. So the SQC1 says no shorter than 7 years. Now it is up to the firm to decide whether it wants to keep audit documentation and record for a longer period or not. The Income Tax Act also requires 10 years. And so therefore, I would recommend that these audit evidences are kept for at least 10 years. Sorry, the Income Tax Act requires 6 years, but we normally keep audit evidences in our firm for a period of 10 years. The standard of quality control SQC1 provides that unless otherwise specified by law or regulation, audit documentation is the property of the auditor only. He may, at his discretion, make portions of or extracts from audit documentation available to clients, provided such disclosure does not undermine the validity of the work performed, or in case of assurance engagement, does not undermine the independence of the auditor or of his personnel. So that, friends, concludes our discussion on the SA 230 audit documentation, and I've tried to give some various summary of various kinds of files that you need to prepare, why audit documentation is important, how it is to be done, how long it is to be kept, what all should be done, do's and don'ts of audit documentation. Systematically, sorry, just हम कौन सी स्लाइड पे थे आपने गला क्यों दिया क्या कर दिया कहां पे यहाँ सब there are I'm going to take you now to certain guidances of the QRB based on the review that the QRB has done, which are in public domain based on SA 230, and what are the conclusions that the QRB has drawn on review of those audit files for financial year 22-23. In one case, they found that not preparing audit documentation that is sufficient to enable the experienced auditor having no previous connection with audit to understand the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures performed to comply with the relevant requirements of SA and other applicable legal and regulatory requirements, the results of the audit procedures performed and the audit evidences obtained, the significant matters arising during the audit, the conclusions reached thereon, and the significant judgments made. So, documentation must be such that it covers all these things in the audit documentation. Not documenting, keeping sufficient audit documentation for recording audit procedures performed and audit evidence obtained. Some examples have been given. The depreciation schedule showing details of description of assets, date of purchase, date of sale, life, use, etc. for property, plant, equipment. This must be there in the audit documentation. Existence and valuation of inventories. So these are examples of things that were in these QRB cases were not present in the audit documentation. So on the other hand, if you look at it, that these are examples of things that must be there in your audit documentation, how you have done bonus calculations, ensuring compliance with AS 109 financial instruments, security deposits, party-wise details, bank confirmations, bank reconciliations, physical verification evidence, etc. Evaluation of the observation, modifications, or emphasis of matter in the component auditor's report, whether how the consolidating auditor has dealt with the EOMs or modifications in the component auditors in the consolidated financial statements. The audit process note in some case did not give details of population of samples selected, details of procedures performed, and outcome thereof. The standard checklist for compliance with standards on auditing as required in para 8A, paired with para A17 of SA 230 was not maintained in the audit documentation, keeping insufficient documentation in the form of specific attributes tested, audit program, analysis, issues, memorandum, etc. as required in para 8 and 9, read with para 8.3 of SA 230. Evidences collected, obtained, were kept on record without linking it to any audit program. So as I said earlier, it's very important that the evidences must be collaborated together. The audit program is a master checklist, and from there, everything should flow and should be linked to the audit program. In some cases, they found that there was no bifurcation in the file on the document provided by the client or document generated by the firm. So this is again a very important aspect that we must divide these documents into two parts that we have obtained from the client or we have generated directly by third-party evidence, not documenting discussions of significant matters of the management or those charged with governance, not assembling the final audit file on a timely basis, that is within 60 days of closure and signing off of the report. Now, friends, we will just take up some cases of where NEFRA has given an order and what kind of observation they have found in these cases, which are important and relating to the audit documentation and important for us to understand them. In the case of Cafe Coffee Day, in order dated 12th April 23, the auditors were charged with tampering with the audit file for making audit file unreliable, as the audit workings have been done in editable Excel files without any security feature to prevent alteration of audit documentation. The audit file has inter alia 87 Excel sheets, out of which 68 Excels were modified on 22nd June 22. The date of NEFRA asked for the audit file was 5th August 22. The date the audit file was submitted to NEFRA. So they were modified between the date the NEFRA asked for the file and submission of the file. So they are basically NEFRA is saying once 60 days have passed from closure of the audit, you cannot then add Excel files or modify the files in the audit working papers. The audit file required to be assembled within 60 days of signing an audit report. The audit report was signed on 24th of May. Accordingly, the audit file was required to be assembled by 23rd July 19. However, it was quite evident from the above that that was not done. An examination audit file shows the names of the engagement team members and the date of performing of the audit procedures were not mentioned in any of the audit working papers, nor are the names of the team members who reviewed the audit work to the extent of review. On examination of the audit file, NEFRA says it could not find any recorded reason or document justifying the modification as required in para 16. So modification of audit documentation reasons must be recorded in the audit file. Similarly, they could not give any credible evidence to claim that the dates of conducting the audit by an article assistant are available in the timesheet maintained separately, because these records were not part of the audit file. So the auditor should not give any reply in respect of non-availability of timing and audit procedures claimed to have been performed by other engagement team members, including the EP, which are not in the audit file, documentation file. Along with the reply to the SCN, the auditors have also submitted additional working papers for consideration, stating that they have been inadvertently missed out while giving evidence in their audit files, as test and control test of details documents were stored in a separate folder to internal financial controls. On submission of additional working papers by the auditors and their claim that they were inadvertently missed out, including them in the audit file, one has to look at SA 230, which emphasizes the importance of timely preparation of audit documentation and its archival within a reasonable time after the issuance of the audit report. In another case of Jay Prakash Associates Limited, it was held that and NEFRA noted that neither the comments noted are conclusive nor the checklist or referenced VP provided sufficient appropriate audit evidence. For example, audit firm had noted that CA Puneet Kumar has reviewed the trends in important financial statement ratios. However, VP does not note that the results of the audit procedures performed, and the comment section only states as per ratio sheet attached, and no further sheets were attached. It also noted that the checklist on compliance with SA says yes, no, NA, whereby the ET has marked either audit procedures were performed for respective paras along with names of VPs or for reference of each SA. NEFRA notes that many of the VP references are not available in the audit file. For example, the engagement team has stated that they had obtained agreement of management that acknowledges and understands responsibilities, such as referred to in the working papers, minutes of the first meeting with the KMP and other officers. However, NEFRA could not trace such working papers in the audit file. So all points out to the fact that all the relevant working papers must be in the audit file itself. Further, many of the statements are without any reference to the working papers altogether. For example, the engagement team has stated that they have followed the firm's policy and procedures for dealing with resolving difference of opinion. In the column of yes, no, NA, the engagement team has stated yes. However, ET has not provided any reference to the audit file. The engagement team has not even documented as to what were the differences of opinion. So then there has to be where the differences of opinion and how they were resolved must be linked and documented here. Fraud risk questionnaire, fraud risk and internal control checklist were merely a compilation of yes, no, NA response and were created towards the end of the audit. The audit firm had also noted remarks for a handful of items, questions of the checklist. However, the remarks were not conclusive. For instance, the question if significant variation between actual stocks and book stocks are investigated, the audit firm had noted yes, rectifications made were necessary. Where necessary. The audit firm did not note any reasons or impact for any of the remarks were noted. Also, no references were noted in the working paper. That could suggest that the audit firm had not evaluated the design of controls and determined if the controls were implemented. Therefore, the audit firm had failed to meet the requirements of para 8 of SA 230. The checklist is merely Ind AS checklist, merely a yes, no, NA checklist with no comments or working paper reference. In absence of any comments, working paper reference, the checklist does not enable an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the audit to understand the basis of such conclusions. The audit firm did neither close the audit file within 60 days of signing of the audit report, nor documented the specific reasons of the changes and the person who made the changes. In the case of another NAFRA order of SRS Limited, it was held that there was no evidence in the audit file of the engagement quality control reviewers showing any review of the audit paper, that any evaluation was done by the EQC reviewer to support the conclusion reached by the engagement team or any areas of his disagreement with the engagement team. That shows that any discussion on significant matters that took place between the EQC reviewer and the engagement team, as required in para 20 of SA 220, read with para 64 of SQC 1. For instance, the independent audit report contained qualified opinion in respect of going concern, but there was nothing in the audit file to show that the related working papers were reviewed by the engagement quality control review. Further, it said that the draft audit report and other important working papers like audit plan, program, setting of materiality, etc., were reviewed by the engagement quality reviewer, as none of these working papers bears the date of the review and the signature of the EQC reviewer. Having reviewed the working papers and related firm's independence, the consultations as required, all these consultations of the firm's independence, etc., working papers were not reviewed by the EQC, or evidence of the review was not in the EQC reviewer's file. There was also a claim that the engagement quality reviewer claimed to have exchanged mails with the engagement partner, and EQC reviewer provided PDF copies of these mails. The emails and attachments were not part of the audit file and were not opening. So this points to the fact, my friends, that anything that is a part of the audit, whether it is even in internal mails between the engagement partner and the quality review partner, all these have to be kept at the same place where the audit files or the review files are there, and have to be signed off at one place. They should clearly indicate the nature of queries, whether they're related to any significant matters and how they were resolved. Also, none of the working papers, the NAFRA says in the audit file bears any reference to the emails, nor do they carry a date of review by the EQC review. So we have, friends, gone through some guidances of the NAFRA on what they have found in various files of the QRB audit done for some certain companies. I'm now coming to the near conclusion of my presentation, where I would like to take you towards some template, one template of the audit working papers, which is a kind of summary based on the audit working papers template issued by the Institute in June 2023. I must say it's an extremely good compilation of working paper templates, and I will though it's very it's a topic in itself on each template on how it's being formed and how an audit to be done, but I will just take you through the index of this template, so that's easier for you to then reach out to this template and see wherever you need at what stage. So they have very nicely divided this into pre-audit stage, planning stage, execution stage, and conclusion stage. So as we discussed in the initial part of our discussion, that the pre-audit stage, a note on appointment, the ADT1 to be filed with the ROC, the challan of ADT1, engagement acceptance, engagement letter, independence confirmations, confidentiality undertakings have to be there at the pre-audit stage, plus discussion on the company and its business. The planning stage, there should be a planning scope of engagement, minutes of planning of meeting, team mobilization, budgetary time and man days, audit strategy, note on understanding client KYC business, key people, minutes of kickoff meeting, note on materiality, note on basis of materiality, significant risk and planned procedures, fraud risk and testing strategy. The planning stage also includes preliminary analyticals of the financials of the auditee, variance analysis. So these will lead us to understand which are the areas we need to focus more on, where there's a variance, significant laws and regulations, work allocation, financial statements, control charts, initial audit checklist, evidence of communication of initial audit checklist, communication of audit schedule, audit requirement communication, schedule 3 and CARO. Then once we have done all this planning and we made our audit program, we then come to the execution of the audit, where under normal circumstances, we will go through the property, plant, equipment, intangible assets review, the CWIP, the right of use assets, depreciation and amortization, investments, trade receivables, cash bank, etc. We will finish all these execution stage items. And then after the audit is done, we will come to our conclusion execution stage. We will come look at whether the concern is a going concern or not, the laws and regulations that are applicable to the entity, any subsequent events that have happened post the financial closure date, and related party transactions, internal control over financial reporting, ICFR, journal entries, contingent liabilities, use of work of experts, work of internal auditors, secretarial compliances, ESOPs, if any. And we then come to the audit conclusion stage. We will look at accounting policies, notes to accounts and disclosures, Schedule 3 checklist, CARO checklist. And in conclusion of the audit, we will look at audit report and the financial statements, audit issues and their closure, engagement, quality control review process, management representation letter, SUM and SAD, actual man hours, final analyticals, communication with audit committee and those charged with governance, partner review documents, closure, and procedures for client documentation. This, friends, is again a checklist given by SA 230 on audit documentation and how the index of the audit documentation should look at. This is again, though it is a yes, no, NA, but you need to then give references and give if you can link it to the various audit files. This is where the issue will be concluded in terms of audit documentation. It basically contains preparation of documentation. Once it is filled up, you will know that you have not missed out any step in the audit documentation at all. That, my friend, concludes my presentation on the audit working paper. I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So thank you so much for such a wonderful and detailed presentation, sir. Sir, due to technical glitch, some camera issue is there. I have received certain question. If you allow, can I ask certain questions, sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, first question is, till how long working papers need to be preserved?
So they need, as per SA 230, they need to be preserved for at least 7 years, but I would recommend 10 years because we are these days getting queries beyond 7 years also. So in our firm, we have our internal procedures. We keep papers up to 10 years, but however, in soft form and in the scanned copies of documents, we can even keep for a longer time because they are only stored in a separate media, and we keep it in a separate on a cloud, or you can keep it in a separate storage.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, what should be the ideal time to keep audit working papers? You have already mentioned to keep, and how to best dispose them of.
So these audit working papers are very sensitive documents. And so if you have I can only share with you my experience on how I am doing it. I am now digitalizing all my files. So wherever the files are old and 10 years have passed, I read out the files to see what are the critical papers in it. For example, signed documents of engagement letters, MRs, signed balance sheets, final certain legal documents or any orders that you receive. We read out those files, we scan them and put them on the cloud, and we destroy the files. We do not give it to a kabadiwala ever. So please don't make that mistake because the papers are very confidential and they can be misused. So beyond 10 years, you can destroy the files.
Yes, sir. So in continuation to your explanation, is there any software or document repository for CAs where they can store such data and fetch documents and information as specified task or event like audit, stock verification, etc.?
So there are softwares which do it, but we are trying to also find such softwares. At the moment, we are storing all our data on cloud, which is quite easy to put and retrieve. It's very easy.
Sir.
And not very expensive also.
So is it essential to have copy of all working papers before finalization of the trial balance and after finalized trial balance duly signed by the assessee?
Absolutely, because the trial balance is the basis of the financial statements, which is signed off by the board of the company or the partners before we issue our opinion on the audits. So how can we issue an opinion on an audit where the financial statement don't tally with the books? So the final signed trial balance, in fact, I will go one step further to say trial balance and grouping and financial statement signed off by the company are prerequisite to issuing an audit report.
Yes, sir. So can statutory auditor review internal auditors' working paper while forming opinion on financial statements?
It is open to the statutory auditor to review any paper of the internal auditor. And if there is anything where he finds that there is something that he needs more information on, he can ask for the working papers of the internal auditor. He can then correspond and with the internal auditor. If then he arrives at a conclusion that there is something where there is a misstatement possible in the financial statement, he must then take it to the those charged with the governance of the company, discuss with them, and then arrive at a conclusion whether he needs to then issue a modified or a EOM in the audit report. And then if or not, in all cases, he must then document his conclusion. As we've been discussing for last 1 hour, documenting the conclusion of your finding is very important.
Yes. Sir, in case of the bank branch audit, then audit of the branch confirmation from debtors, that is the borrowers, are mandatory.
So it is a recommended process. As I think I took up that issue in my presentation also, that these are, if they are not available to the, you can't say I've got no confirmation from any debtors or bank. So you follow alternate procedures. And so you follow alternate procedures and you look at the subsequent account of that person and see whether the money has come in, has it become a NPA or not become NPA, has the statements come in or not. So you look at surrounding evidences to see whether you want to qualify or issue a modified report on the branch or not.
So last question. Sir, kindly highlight documentation with reference to the instructions received over phone from various sources during the conduct of the audit. So how to document that?
Instructions from whom? Who will give you instructions?
Instructions or any information received or any confirmation received during phone. So how to document that?
So confirmation by phone is not a documentation. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. You cannot work or rely on any confirmation that you receive on a WhatsApp or a phone. You must get it on as evidence on an email. Ask the person to send you an email and then document that in your audit working papers. A confirmation by phone is not a confirmation. It has no evidence.
Sir, any practical suggestion? Sir, in line to same, any practical suggestion on cross-referencing the electronic working paper for easy retrieval in the future?
So once you have documented everything into your audit file, so as I said that there is an audit program. Based on audit program, there'll be sub-files. For example, suppose you've done fixed assets and PPE verification or inventory verification. There'll be files and folders related to that. So in the main audit program, you create a link to that file. And then it's linked to, once you open your main audit program, you can go, you can meander through your whole audit file anywhere you want. This is what NEFRA also wanted. And this is what QRB also wanted. That you should be all concise. That documentation should be concise and in one place and easily accessible from there. And it's very easy to do. You make an audit program and you link it to all the files. It will make sure you don't make a mistake.
So thank you so much, sir. Now we come to an end. And on behalf of Auditing and Assurance Standard Board of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, I extend my heartiest thanks towards you for sparing your valuable time as well as in this very busy period. Again, you have given your kind consent, even though you were traveling these days, but you have given your kind consent to deliberate on this very important topic. So thank you so much, sir, on behalf of AASB of ICI for enlightening all of us on various intricacies on this audit working papers. Thank you so much, sir. I also extend warm thanks to all the participants of today's webinar. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Namaste.